was a crisp autumn evening in 1967 when 21-year-old Louisa Dunne left her flat in Birmingham to meet friends. She never made it. Hours later, her body was found in a quiet alley, the life of a young woman cut brutally short. For decades, her murder haunted investigators, baffled her family, and became one of Britain's most infamous unsolved crimes. But half a century later, thanks to persistence, forensic science, and a single overlooked clue, the case that many thought would never be solved finally revealed its dark truth. This is the story of Louisa Dunne. Louisa was born in 1946 in Birmingham, the heart of England's industrial Midlands. The daughter of Irish immigrants, she grew up in a modest household where discipline and hard work were valued. She was bright, ambitious, and independent. Friends described her as warm, witty, and determined to carve out a life for herself in a world that often underestimated young women. She worked as a secretary in a local law firm, but her true passion was art. She painted in the evenings and dreamed of saving enough money to study at an art school in London. At just 21, Louisa represented a new generation of women, confident, hopeful, and unwilling to be confined by traditional expectations. Her life was only just beginning. And then, in one violent act, it was stolen. On October 28, 1967, Louisa had arranged to meet two friends at a cafe near Birmingham city center. She left her flat around 6:30 p.m., dressed in a navy coat and carrying a small handbag. When Louisa failed to arrive at the cafe, her friends assumed she had been delayed. By midnight, when she still hadn't returned home, worry set in. The next morning, a passersby discovered her body in a narrow alleyway behind a row of warehouses. She had been strangled with her own scarf. Her handbag was missing. The attack was brutal, yet strangely precise. There were no defensive wounds, no clear signs of a prolonged struggle. It appeared as if Louisa had been taken by surprise. Her death shocked Birmingham. She was young, respectable, and by all accounts had no enemies. Who would want her dead? Police quickly launched an intensive inquiry. Detectives interviewed more than 300 people, from Louisa's co-workers to men she had dated casually. They canvassed local pubs, checked bus routes, and scoured the area where her body was found. The missing handbag suggested robbery, but nothing else about the crime fit that profile. The alleyway where she was found was secluded, an odd choice for a simple mugging. Several witnesses reported seeing a man loitering near the warehouses that night. Descriptions varied. Some said he was tall with dark hair. Others claimed he wore a long coat. The lack of consistency made it difficult for police to track him down. Officers also examined Louisa's personal life. Was she involved with someone who might have harmed her? Friends said she had recently broken off a brief relationship with a man described as controlling and possessive, but he had an alibi. For months, the investigation consumed headlines. Newspapers printed photographs of Louisa, calling her the girl in the alley. Despite the attention, no one was ever charged. By the spring of 1968, the trail had gone cold. Over the years, several suspects emerged. The first was the ex-boyfriend, the man Louisa had recently pushed out of her life. He denied any involvement, and police eventually cleared him. Another suspect was a warehouse worker with a history of petty crime. He was seen drinking heavily near the crime scene on the night of the murder, but again, the evidence was circumstantial. Perhaps the most chilling suspect was a man named Richard Haynes, a known predator who lived only a mile from where Louisa's body was found. Haynes was convicted of sexual assaults in the early 1970s. Just a few years after Louisa's death, many believed he was capable of murder. Yet when questioned, he denied knowing Louisa, and police couldn't link him to the scene. Each lead ended in frustration. For Louisa's family, it was a tormenting cycle of hope and despair. The murder of Louisa Dunne struck a chord across Britain. In the late 1960s, violent crime against women was still seen as unusual, especially in a provincial city like Birmingham. Newspapers ran headlines for weeks. The Daily Mirror described Louisa as the girl who trusted too much. The Birmingham Mail published emotional appeals from her parents, begging anyone with information to come forward. But as months turned into years, public interest waned. Other crimes captured headlines, and Louisa's case faded from memory, except for her grieving family, who never stopped asking questions. Her parents both died without knowing the truth, but her younger brother, Michael, refused to give up. For decades, he pushed police to reopen the investigation. He attended every appeal, wrote letters to officials, and kept Louisa's story alive. In the early 2000s, advances in forensic science began to breathe new life into old cases. Cold case units across the UK started re-examining unsolved murders. In 2012, Louisa's case file was reopened. Detectives retrieved items of her clothing that had been stored for decades. Forensic scientists conducted DNA analysis, a tool unavailable in the 1960s. The results were astonishing. A partial DNA profile was recovered from the scarf used to strangle Louisa. The profile was uploaded to the national database. At first, there was no direct match, but in 2016, during a routine sweep of the system, investigators discovered a familiar link. The DNA was closely related to that of a man who had been arrested for an unrelated assault. The breakthrough pointed police toward a new suspect, Anthony Harper, a 25-year-old laborer who lived near the crime scene in 1967. Harper had died in 1988, but his relatives' DNA provided the crucial link. Anthony Harper had never been on the original suspect list. At the time of the murder, he was a quiet, unremarkable man with no serious criminal record. But digging deeper, detectives uncovered a disturbing history. Harper had been accused of harassing women in the late 1960s. Though no charges were brought, after Louisa's death, he moved to another town, married, and lived an outwardly ordinary life until his death from heart failure in his 40s. Forensic evidence left little doubt. Harper's DNA on the scarf was conclusive. After 50 years, Louisa's killer had finally been unmasked. The announcement in 2017 made national news. Louisa's brother Michael, then in his 70s, stood before cameras and wept. For 50 years, we lived with questions, with silence, with pain, he said. Today, we finally know who took my sister from us. It does not bring her back, but it brings us peace. Police formally closed the case, declaring Anthony Harper responsible for Louisa Dunne's murder. The resolution highlighted the power of modern forensic science. A crime once thought unsolvable had been cracked by a few microscopic traces left on a scarf half a century earlier. Even with the case closed, questions remain. Why did Harper kill Louisa? Was it a random attack, or did he know her? Detectives believe it was likely opportunistic. Perhaps Harper followed Louisa, seized an opportunity in the dark alley, and killed her in panic or rage. But without Harper alive to confess, the true motive remains buried. It's also unclear whether Harper might have been responsible for other unsolved assaults in Birmingham during the 1960s. With his death, those answers may never come. The murder of Louisa Dunne is more than just a solved crime. It is a story about perseverance, about science, and about the enduring demand for justice. For 50 years, her family carried the weight of uncertainty. For 50 years, investigators revisited dead ends. Yet the truth was always there, trapped in a scarf, waiting for technology to reveal it. Cold cases remind us of a haunting reality. Time may pass, witnesses may die, memories may fade, but evidence endures. And sometimes, even decades later, justice can speak. Cold cases remind us of a haunting reality. Time may pass, witnesses may die, memories may fade, but evidence endures. And sometimes, even decades later, justice can speak. Louisa's life was cut short before it truly began. But in solving her case, the world was reminded that no victim should ever be forgotten. As we reflect on her story, one question lingers. How many other names, lost to history, are still waiting for their voices to be heard? This is Case Unknown, where cold cases refuse to stay buried. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more haunting mysteries. And don't forget to like the video to support real crime stories that deserve to be heard. Drop your theories in the comments.